Hey, what is up, YouTube? So on this video, we're gonna go over the entire LS swap as far as where you can save money and where you do not want to skimp out on money. I want to cover pretty much every major component on your LS swap, and I will let you know the good places where you can save some money and you don't have to go extremely premium stuff, and the places where you do not want to skip money. As always, there is chapters down below, so if you want to fast forward to whatever subject you want to cover, for example, radiators, injectors, coils, or whatever, just click the tab down below and you can just skip forward to your section instead of watching the entire video. So let's get to it, guys. All right, guys, starting off the list, we're gonna cover radiators. Now, radiators, this is kind of like a touchy subject. Some people like to go all out, get like the upper radiators from Be Cool and stuff like that. This is a spot where I think you can save some money. So I use on this truck, which is obviously turboed, makes about 1,000 horsepower. The radiator I'm using is actually from Amazon. So the radiator I got is for a C10, and you can see it fits pretty good. And it's also for LS swaps. So that's one thing you want to look for, guys. So when you're looking for a radiator, you want to look for LS swap, which means you'll have your steam port right here. So that way it's ready to hook up to your engine on the steam port side, and your coolant goes from your engine to your radiator. Another thing you want to look for, guys, is if you're running an automatic transmission or even a TR6060, you want to look for these transmission cooler ports. There should be a transmission cooler inside here. If you do run a transmission cooler in your radiator, you do not have to run an external cooler, okay? I don't recommend running an external trans cooler unless you're doing something dramatic, like maybe you're towing stuff, or maybe you have a real high stall converter which causes the transmission to get hotter, the transmission fluid. But an internal cooler inside the radiator should be perfectly fine for pretty much every build. Another thing you want to look for is to make sure your radiator is set up for your vehicle. So for example, you can't just grab any radiator and throw it into a C10. You got to make sure the mounting points are correct, stuff like that. So the easiest thing that I found to do, if you want to go cheap and save some money here, is go to Amazon, type in your chassis. For example, I did like 73 C10 radiator, LS radiator, or LS swap radiator, and this came up. It has good reviews. Now obviously not every radiator is created equal, so you want to look at the reviews, guys. Read the reviews. If the reviews sound like the guy's like, hey, it came in and it was dirty, so I give it a 1 star, all right, that's not a legit review. But if he's like, hey, I had it for like 3 months and started leaking, you might want to pay attention to that review. Now, running this radiator, the only upgrade I did was a spall fans. So if you guys been following me for a while, you guys know I always recommend upgrading your fans, because when they make this whole kit here, it's probably gonna be like 300 bucks. So they're obviously not gonna spend money and put in quality fans. You're gonna put some generic fans. Don't focus on the CFM, because the CFM is not regulated. So they could give you like a max CFM output of like 1200 and tell you, hey, this fan runs 1200 CFM, when in reality it's pulling in a lot less air than that. So don't focus on that. Instead, right off the bat, I would just upgrade to a spall radiator, and you should, a spall fan, and you should be fine. Another important thing when you're hooking up your radiator, for your fans especially, is get a quality relay. A lot of these kits come with a cheap relay. The wiring is like really thin, so it's not gonna hold the amperage for your fans. So you wanna get a quality relay. This is the one I use right here. A quality fuse holder. This is the one I use right here. And you wanna hook it up straight to your battery, the power side, and then have your computer control your fans. Do not have a switch control it. If you don't have a computer that controls fans, which you should because you're doing an LS swap, but if you don't have a computer that controls fans, or you don't know how to wire it up, you could go cheap and just hook up a sensor, a temp sensor that closes and grounds out your fans relays when the vehicle gets a certain temperature. Now, like I mentioned, this is an Amazon radiator. This is a turbocharged engine making over 1,000 horsepower. I do daily drive it. It doesn't get too hot here in San Diego, but these temperatures do run a little bit on the warm side. Usually it runs around 190 degrees, 195. Every once in a while it'll break 200, which is a little bit on the warm side compared to my Chevelle. That one has a Be Cool radiator. It has a spall fans that came with it. That one was real efficient. That one's usually around 180 to 185 degrees. So again, this will get you through. This will be fine just for your daily driver, your cruiser, and it shouldn't overheat your engine, because we know these run at around 200, 210 degrees. So you shouldn't overheat with a quality, or with a good Amazon radiator, or even an eBay radiator. But if you want to take the precaution and get a little bit of upgrade. I would say between this one, the next higher up would be a Champion radiator, because there's still, some of them are made in China, but they're better quality than these, and they cool a little bit more efficiently. Now, Holley does sell their frostbite radiators, which are made by Champion, I believe. So if instead of spending the extra money for the frostbite, you can just get a Champion radiator and it should be the same thing. And if you want to go higher than that, you go like to a Be Cool radiator. There's a bunch of other companies, DeWitt, a bunch of other companies that make really quality radiators made in the USA. And as always, if you guys want to save some money, subscribe to my Instagram, and you guys can hit up Pro Touring Store, and he has a bunch of stuff in stock, quality stuff. He doesn't really sell any Chinese stuff, but he'll be able to save you some money if you're a subscriber to my Instagram. All right, so I think I pretty much covered everything for the cooling system. So now let's get into the meat and potatoes of your LS swap, which is your actual engine. So if you want to go cheap, again, I'm trying to tell you guys how to go the cheapest way possible and still make it dependable. So if you want to go cheap, you're obviously going to go with the Junkyard engine. Now, another option to that would be to get an LS3 crate engine, which is around 7,500 bucks, maybe 8 grand. And that's going to give you the LS3 heads, a 6.2 liter aluminum block, everything like that. So it's a lot more expensive, but it definitely is something that's going to last you a long time. So if you have a classic like Camaro or Nova or Chevelle, something that you want to drive for a long time, you don't want to worry about the engine, I would definitely recommend a crate. But if we're going to go cheap, let's go ahead and talk about the Junkyard engine. Now, if you do a Junkyard swap and you pull a Junkyard engine out, I would say if it's going to have over or close to 200,000 miles, I probably wouldn't swap at the cam, because most likely those bearings are shot. And if you swap at the cams, all of a sudden you're gonna start losing oil pressure. If possible, and you can verify oil pressure on your Junkyard engine, that'd be awesome. If it's over 20 PSI, you should be good. The higher the better. But regardless, if you do a Junkyard engine, I will definitely right off the bat replace all the seals, because by now it's probably like a 20-year-old engine. So replace all the seals, front main, rear main, all that stuff. Obviously the valve covers, gasket seals and all that stuff. And I would also replace the NOx sensors, because they tend to get water on the Gen 3 versions. So I would replace the NOx sensors, and the harness for that, it's pretty cheap. I think it's like under 100 bucks for quality stuff. Like I said, I would upgrade the oil pump, get a high flow oil pump. That would help you out if your engine's worn or if your cam bearings are worn, especially if you're gonna do a cam. You're like, hey, fuck it, I'm just gonna do the cam regardless of what you say. If you're gonna do a cam, guys, definitely upgrade your oil pump. Now, one place where you can save money is on the oil, the oil pan. So again, think of it as common sense, guys. If it's just a piece of aluminum, like for example, this radiator cover here, it's just a piece of metal with a few bends, and or maybe it's cast. You can get away with cheap stuff, guys. It's not gonna be that complicated. But if it's something that constantly is moving or electrical, like coils or injectors, you're not gonna wanna go cheap. So if it's just like a piece of aluminum, like an oil pan, you can definitely go on Amazon, eBay, pick up a cheap cast oil pan from China. As always, check the reviews, guys. If it has like over 4 stars, you're gonna be okay. The negatives, check them out, make sure. It could be like something like, hey man, my oil pan was cracked. Okay, that happens every once in a while, even with quality companies. So don't stress that out, guys. The oil pan, what you're gonna do is Holley makes a bunch of oil pans that fit various vehicles, like the 302-1, I think there's like a 302-2, 302-3, something like that. So if you're looking for a specific oil pan, let's say you want the F-body oil pan, right? Go on Amazon, search LS Swap F-body oil pan. Whichever one comes up, as long as they got good reviews, guys, you should be able to swap it out. And like I said, you can do your oil pump. Other stuff that you want to swap out on your Junkyard engine. Okay, let's talk about the intake. If you want to, maybe you have a truck engine and your intake's too high and it won't clear your hood because you're putting it in the car. The intake, the cheapest one to get is going to be the sheet metal intakes. Again, guys, you don't have to get Holley. You don't have to get Phytech. You don't have to get anything expensive. It's a piece of metal. Like I said, you can literally go to Amazon and just jump on Amazon and Google LS Swap intake, LS Swap sheet metal intake, and you'll see intakes that'll fit your engine that are a lot cheaper. Another place you can save some money on, if you're doing drive-by cable, obviously this is drive-by-wire, but if you're doing drive-by cable, the throttle bodies on Amazon, they're like under 100 bucks. They're cheap. You don't have to get the one from Holley. because the one from Holley, I believe you get the throttle body, you have to buy a sensor separate, the TPS, the idle air control, and the screw separate. So it's a fucking pain in the butt. If you get the one from Amazon, like a 93 or 92 millimeter or 105 or 104, whatever it is, if you get that one, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna come with the sensors. The sensors are even okay. You can run it. If your throttle body is gonna be drive-by-wire, you definitely wanna get a quality throttle body. You don't wanna get a cheap one from Amazon or eBay. And you also gotta be careful, because even if you say buy stuff from eBay and it says OEM and it gives you the part number, it might be like saying OEM equivalent and give you the part number. It doesn't say equivalent, it just says OEM part number 230, whatever. Most of those are fake, guys, especially if you're looking at injectors, and the injector set for like an OEM set of 8 injectors is like under 100 bucks. It's gonna be fakes, guys. Each injector is around 30 to 60 bucks, just a heads up. So back to the throttle body, if you get a drive-by-wire throttle body, you wanna get a quality one. There's a few aftermarket companies that make them. So they'll make this piece, and then they use all the gears and drive and everything, the electronic stuff. They'll use the OEM stuff and put it in their housing. You could also just get a regular OEM throttle body and use that instead. Now, some sensors are very important. For example, your crank sensor, your cam sensor, stuff that has to be very accurate. You definitely want to go with AC duct on those. Stuff that doesn't have to be extremely accurate. For example, your TPS could be a little bit off. Your temperature, your intake air temp sensor could be a little bit off. Stuff like that. If you really want to go cheap and save $8, freaking get the cheap stuff. That's fine. But if it's sensors, I would always recommend AC duct, because if you have issues on the road, usually those sensors last a long time. Now, with that being said, stuff you want to keep on your junkyard engine is your coils, man. Those coils, even if it has 200,000 miles, they're gonna last a long time. If for some reason you think your coils are failing, stick to OEM. Go on Rock Auto, hit a Pro Touring store, order some AC Delco OEM coils, man. You can't go wrong with that. If you think about it, if the engine already had 200,000 miles and it didn't have issues with the coils, why would you risk buying an aftermarket coil, especially the cheap ones from Amazon, that might last you like 5,000 miles? Or let's say they last you 100,000 miles. The OEM ones are gonna last you twice as long, guys. So just stick with the OEM stuff. Same thing with injectors. Injectors, they have to be, they work all the time. As soon as you start your engine, they're firing fuel in there constantly. So you wanna make sure they're dependable, they're durable, and they work properly. So stick with OEM injectors. You could, if you're gonna go, like, these are obviously aftermarket, but they're based on OEM injectors. These are based on LS3 injectors. So if you're gonna go aftermarket, if you wanna get bigger injectors, I say stick with companies like FIC. Again, you could always order them from Pro Touring Store, but FIC has quality injectors that are flow matched, so that way it flows evenly across all your cylinders. All right, so we covered the important parts of the engine. Now let's cover over the cosmetic stuff. Let's say you want to upgrade your valve covers and get the cool ones that had the coils because you're cool like that. Well, again, guys, it's just a piece of metal. You can freaking get some cheap ones from Amazon, eBay, that are copies of the Holley one and work just as well. If you want to get upgraded ones that have better options, you could definitely go to like Wagner and get some custom ones made. Now the difference is, the Holley ones, like I mentioned in my other video, the Holley ones are 2-piece, but anytime you want to add oil, you got to pull them off. Or you can get, they make a centerpiece here that has like a filler neck, so you can actually add oil through here. So you can get that if you're going to get the Holley style valve covers here that cover the coils. You get that so you don't have to pull those off anymore and add oil to them. So that's a good option. If you want to go really cheap, Jags, I think it's Jags, make some of these right here that just cover the coils, and they work with your stock valve covers that come with your junkyard engine. So that right there will make it look a lot better than just the stock placement of the coils. It'll just cover them up. All right, so now that we covered the engine, if you want to stay cheap again and your accessories on your engine from your junkyard work, use them, save some money. A tip, guys, something that I see a lot, if you're gonna get these brackets powder coated, your alternator, this freaking thing right here, gets a ground from the case, the metal aluminum case here. It gets a ground from there. So it's obviously gonna get a ground from here. So if you powder coat this and this, it's not gonna get a good ground through here, and then it's not gonna get a good ground through here, because obviously your engine has a ground part. So you're gonna wanna make sure if you powder coat these, cover up wherever this case bolts onto here. So the metal is touching the metal, cover up that part in between there, cover up this part in between here, cover up this part in between here that goes to that touches the block, this part that touches this metal, and then the metal part that touches this little spacer here. So you got to make sure it has continuity from here straight to the block. If not, when you start your alternator, you're gonna be like, hey, why do I have 6 amps or 6 volts, 7 volts, 8 volts, 2 volts? You might have some crazy reading from your alternator. That's because it's not getting a good ground. Now, if you ever buy an aftermarket kit that's already powder coated, if it's a good company, they already have that covered. There's already parts where the part has been taped off, so that way it's actually making contact metal to metal. If you get a higher end alternator, some of them will have a grounding post here, and all it's doing is just grounding the case, and then you run a ground wire from there down to the bottom. The Chevelle has that. The Chevelle's not here, I will show you, but you definitely want to do that if you're going to paint it or powder coat it. If the brackets that you have do not work, some of the cheaper options I've seen are ICT billet, which has worked for me in the past. I believe now they're starting to make fakes on that. I don't know how well they work. If you want to go cheap, and for some reason the fake ones are cheaper than the ICT billets, like by a lot, then just look at the reviews. If the reviews are good, go ahead and buy them. Like I said, it's just a piece of metal. It should be easy to copy. The only thing when you're doing your brackets is you have to base them on your engine. So if you have a junkyard engine for a truck, it has different spacing. That crank pulley is further out than like an LS based engine, right? So you have to make sure you get the spacing right. There's 3 types of spacing that you have to make sure you get correct for your brackets to line up, so that way your alternator belt or your belt lines up to your alternator, to your crank pulley, to your freaking idler pulleys, the rest of that stuff. When you're doing a water pump, it's not that expensive to go OEM. Go ahead and get the AC Delco one. I'd probably replace that if you have a junkyard engine. I get a newer water pump because that thing's been around. It's been used for like 20 plus years, so you might as well replace it while you're there. Transmissions, there's so many options. You can stick with your original transmission that is in your vehicle. You can upgrade to an electronic transmission, 4L80, 6L80, all kinds of options. You can do a manual transmission. So I'm not gonna go into that because there's just so many options. With transmissions, I probably would not get a used one, especially a 60E, because they're so weak, they're probably already slipping. If you can save some money for that, get a rebuilt one, or rebuild the one you have. You know, that shouldn't be an issue. Obviously, you're gonna get a converter that matches your transmission, or a clutch that matches your transmission, and make sure you use flex plates or flywheels that work with your LS swap. You're gonna have to do a little bit of research on your own, Google some stuff, and then you'll figure it out. All right, guys, so next we're gonna get into your exhaust and your headers, because this is probably one of the posts that pisses the most amount of people off, just because a lot of people like to use cheap Chinese headers and they'll vouch for them because they save some money. But if you get some cheap headers, especially from eBay or Amazon, a lot of times what you want to look for, definitely check out the reviews. You want to look at the spacing from here, how much it comes out, and then to your coils, or to your spark plug wires. Because a lot of times I've seen pretty much every Chinese header I've ever seen on the LS swap that I worked on, one of the wires, maybe even 2, are touching that, and over time it's going to melt, it's going to short out, it's going to have a misfire. If the wire touches anything metal, anything that gets hot, it's going to eventually short out. So if you want to do cheap, you can get your Amazon. Definitely, if you get an Amazon or an eBay header, buy a freaking hammer, because you're going to have to make it fit, especially if your wires are about to hit. Now, you can use some of these spark plug wires here made by SL. They have ceramic on the tips, so that way it doesn't melt to the header. Those are decent. I don't know how long they last. I did have them on here when I had Speed Engineering headers the first time I got into LS swaps, and I went the cheap route, and those headers were on here probably for like 4 months before I threw them out and replaced them with some quality stuff. Now, if you want to go up a little bit higher than the Chinese stuff, like I mentioned, you can't go with Speed Engineering. They're made in China, they're cheap, and half the time they'll install and clear with no issues. The other half, you'll have to hit them with the hammer. So this part here where it actually bolts up, that's not the issue, guys. They all bolt up to the frame. It's all the same bolt pattern and stuff. They all bolt up to the engine, not the frame, the engine. The issue is the way they're bent and how they clear the spark plug wires and how they clear the frame. So that's going to be the issue there on your headers. If you get the cheap ones, if you want to get a little bit higher quality, like I said, freaking Speed Engineering, I don't recommend them, but they might be a little bit better than the Chinese ones from Amazon or eBay, the no-name ones. After that, you can still get Chinese headers that are better quality from like Summit Racing, like Headman makes some, Hooker makes some. There's a few companies that make some that are made in China, but a little bit better quality control. If you want to go higher than that, and you want to start getting into the premium stuff, you can obviously go with some Doug Thorley's, which I highly recommend. So the premium ones are Doug Thorley's Ultimate headers. Now, when I did my Ultimate headers, I did get them for the Chevelle. I did have fitment issues. I talked back, or I called the company. They did send a new set or a new header for the driver's side. That took another 6 weeks to get in. So the Doug Thorley's that I've installed about 4 sets now. Never had an issue with those. So if you want to go premium, I definitely recommend the Doug Thorley's. All right, so next, let's cover over the plumbing of the entire engine, transmission, and stuff. So when I do the hoses, I like to use regular hoses. So it takes a while. You usually have to go to AutoZone. I'll cut a coat hanger wire and then run it to my hose. And then I'll figure out what size the inlet is, what size the outlet is of the pump. And then I'll take the hose and I'll try to find a hose that fits that pattern and has the same openings on the ends. It's a pain in the butt, but it does give me like an OEM clean look. And I definitely write it down afterwards, so that way if I need to replace that hose, I can do it. If you want to do that and save some time, you can Google like your engine, whatever car you have, and usually for the radiator, they put them in the same spots. So like this C10 usually has a hose here. I think like the Camaros have it over here. So they usually put them in the same spot. So you go to forums and be like, hey, what radiator hoses did you guys use? They might give you different part numbers. Buy the part numbers, test fit them. Don't cut them, just test fit them. If they fit, use them. If they don't fit, take them back to AutoZone. They're good about that. They'll give you your money back, and all you did was waste a little bit of time. So that's what I use for the radiator hoses. They do have some fittings that are AN style that do work. I use them on the Monte Carlo. If you want to get those, again, Pro Touring Store will hook you up. He's got some quality stuff. If you're gonna do your cooling lines for your transmission, you can use the regular braided AN lines. I use a lot of Evo Energy stuff because it's cheap and it works. If you want to go higher quality, I think Fragola has better stuff. I've used their stuff too, and you can tell the fittings are a little bit thicker, a little bit better quality. But like I said, I've never had issues with the Evo Energy. So you could use the braided lines for your trans cooler lines, the ones that I used here. You might need a few fittings to make it fit. But if you're gonna do your fuel system, I would highly recommend using PTFE lines because they're gonna last a lot longer. And if you're gonna use E85, you definitely want to use the PTFE lines. So now that we're talking about the fuel system, let's go ahead and get into it. So if we're gonna go cheap and your radiator or your fuel tank's in good condition, you can stick with your fuel tank and just get an external fuel pump. If you're gonna go with an external fuel pump, you're gonna wanna run 100 micron filter to protect your external fuel pump. So put that before the fuel pump. And then after the fuel pump, you're gonna use a 10 micron filter to protect your injectors. Now you can put that before or after the regulator. A popular option is using the Corvette style fuel filter regulator because it's a fuel filter and a regulator, so it protects your injectors, and it also gives you around 43 to 58 PSI, depends on which version you have. Now, if you use that one, make sure you're using a fuel pump that's pushing less than 255 gallons. No, I'm sorry, 255 liters per hour, because if it goes over 255 liters per hour, that's just too much flow for that filter to handle, and it's not gonna be able to control fuel pressure, and your fuel pressure can start increasing. So like if you have a 300 liter per hour fuel pump, you might have like 70, 80 PSI. If you have a Hellcat fuel pump, you probably max out on 90 PSI. So just be aware of that, guys. If you want to go a little bit better, you could always do an in-tank fuel pump. If you do an in-tank fuel pump, you're gonna have to buy a tank that's set up for an in-tank fuel pump. So that means it's gonna have a bowl It's gonna have baffles so the fuel doesn't slosh around. It's gonna have a bowl to where the fuel pump sits in. And then for that one, you do not need that 100 micron filter. It already has a filter before the fuel pump. All you will need is a filter for your injectors, which again, it could be the Corvette filter or it could be a separate filter. If you do a separate filter, 10 micron filter, you're gonna have to get a fuel pressure regulator, and then you'll probably wanna run around 50 to 60 PSI of fuel pressure for your LS swap. All right guys, so now let's go over the harness, because a harness is very important for your LS swap. This is one place where you cannot save money. Now, if you wanna save money and you have experience as far as electrical experience or mechanical experience, you can keep the OEM harness that came with your Junkyard engine, and then you got dependent, you can pull out some of the wiring for your emission stuff like your EVAP, your EGR stuff like that, pull all that wiring out. The rest of the wiring, you're gonna have to add a fuse box to it, add fuses for your injector power, your ignition coil power, your central power, all that stuff, your fuel pump. So they do make some kits that help you do that. But again, you're probably gonna end up saving like 200 bucks. For me, I'd rather just get a quality harness from someone like BP Automotive, PSI Performance, Current Performance, I think they're called, something like that. There's a few companies that make aftermarket, they call them standalone harnesses, but they call them standalone because you just hook up the engine to that computer and it runs. You don't have to worry about connected to your vehicle as far as like integrating to other control modules. So you do want to run a quality harness. I've seen a lot of times where shops will get crappy harnesses from eBay, Amazon, and then all of a sudden you're having all kinds of random issues like, hey, my crank system's not reading correctly, it doesn't start, it doesn't freaking, it misfires at high RPM, stuff like that. So you always want to harness. You cannot skimp out on your harness. Imagine trying to diagnose an electrical issue on a harness that you ran through the firewall, underneath the freaking floorboard or wherever you ran it to, inside your thing, and you're trying to trace wires and figure out which one's bad. You don't want to freaking do that. I'm telling you guys, this is one of those parts you buy once, cry once. Spend the extra money, get a cool one. You could also go aftermarket as far as your computer. You get a Holly Terminator X, you can get a Phytech. I think there's a few other companies out there that are coming out with their own computers and their own harnesses to run these LS engines. They haven't been around for too long, so we don't know how good they are. We don't know if they're gonna last 5 years, 20 years. And even another thing, guys, just a tip here, if you guys ever buy something and it gives you a lifetime warranty, it doesn't mean it's a lifetime warranty for however long you live or the vehicle lives. If that company goes out of business in 2 years, your lifetime warranty is gone, guys. So if you're sold because, hey, this new company has a lifetime warranty on the computers and they go out of business next year, freaking that computer's no longer under warranty, guys. Just a heads up. All right, guys, so this video is already long enough as it is. So again, if you guys have questions, comment down below. I don't check my YouTube channel that often as far as to answer questions, but if you guys need help with your LS swap, like always, guys, subscribe to my Instagram. I have a subscriber section where people are always in there asking me questions. Hey man, my car's misfiring. Or even if your car's at a shop and their shop's telling you one thing like, hey, the shop's telling you that I'm missing my freaking map sensor and it doesn't run that way. Freaking ask me, guys. Subscribe, ask me. I know it's 20 bucks a month, but I guarantee you it's gonna be the best 20 bucks you ever spent because I give you the best knowledge. It's unbiased. And I would say 90% of the issues that we have in the subscriber section are fixed without replacing any parts. It's just either a programming issue, maybe bad wiring, maybe bad programming, like you input the right sensor, stuff like that, or a vacuum leak, stuff like that, guys. So I'm telling you guys, 20 bucks a month will save you a lot of money and headaches. So I'll catch you guys in the next video.